So up next is Sam Taitel, who I know very well, doing a class on centered receiving. And if you don't know, Sam began practicing in 1999 at the age of 5. She was at 17, she was Uchideshi at Lyric Aikikai under Yamada Sensei. And at the same time, after that, she studied cultural anthropology and sociolinguistics at NYU. They now are at East Lake Aikido in Minneapolis, and she's part of the founding Solstice Seminars team. Also in Minneapolis, she's been really busy as a racial and social justice activist. So here's Sam, who's my daughter, by the way, if you didn't know.
Thank you.
I'd add that.
You're doing good, Janice.
So one of the things that I absolutely loved about Original Strength and what I've been taking from it is what Lisa Sensei said about the separation of those pieces and appreciating them as they are. I think with this class, I really want to focus on unifying them, but still like celebrating and appreciating their individual and unique contributions to your body and how it moves. I just want to know where they are and move them together as a sum of the whole. So even starting, I would like to start as well, like how Lisa started, just rocking, and please continue as I go. So this rocking feels really good for me, but this is hard to fall when you're being thrown, right? My head is the end, which means all the force is coming back to the head. So doing this individually is really good at strengthening your neck, but it's not safe when there's added force. So just a small shift. I'm coming down my side and back up. Down one side and back up. So this is rather than on my spine, it's on the side of my leg and my lats. And so I'm expanding my side as well. So there's no space. I'm not trying to get this beautiful hourglass hip because that just, it clunks. So rather I'm laying my entire side down and using my arm as well. Pinky, let me shift. Pinky, all the way up to shoulder. And so my hand and my arm are matching in their receiving. So pinky toe, pinky finger, down to foot, outside at my hip and my elbow, and then all the way up onto my shoulder. And just rocking back and forth. Nice. And switch sides. Once again, on one side, or you can alternate sides. And as I said, please just continue as I go. I also like repetition. I'm a creature of habit. So just take what you will. If you need to stay in a spot, please continue to explore and do what's good for your body. If it's way smaller, that's okay. Just feel how you match your arm and your leg. And then go back to the original one as well, down your spine to feel how it's different. What's being activated, what pieces of yourself you're adding. Nice. And as I said, alternating sides. So switching at the top. Nice. And I love this as a really good warm up as well. We do this in a ton of classes to start. And another hard part, as you roll, at the top, I want to expand my whole back. So my back is big and has a large surface area rather than trying to switch with smushed shoulder blades. That means there's a gap. I personally create this valley between my shoulder blades that I don't want to roll over. So when I switch, if it's really tight, it gets really clunky. Rather, I want my back really large. So it's the bottom of this large bowl that can just rock. And play with your timing as well. Come forward more, come back, see if you can stay up and down. Find the balance point. And so continue to experiment with that, because as I go into why I named this class, centered receiving, you're already receiving the ground. And it's something that you have to learn to do, because the ground is not going to budge a ton for you. You can dig a hole, but trust me, it's not even 1% of the entire planet. So as you continue rolling, make sure you're taking care of yourself and fitting to the ground, fitting to your body, fitting to your ability today. And even past that, I feel my whole body, and I'm thinking about this. Okay, is my head touching the ground? No, check. Are my feet landing softly? Good. But I don't want my attention to be there. So as you continue to roll back and forth, try to compress the heaviness, the gravity into your pelvis. Like a black hole, dying star, just intense, intense gravity. And it's all focused in your pelvis. So rather, it's this very heavy, small point that I'm rotating around in my pelvis. So whereas everything is connected, my attention isn't just going to my head, my attention isn't just going to my feet. If you need to start that smaller, so you can feel where that point is. I'm thinking about the signals I'm receiving from my body. I feel my glutes on the ground. I feel my muscles, the weight of my knees being pulled down by gravity. And I want to keep that point in one spot. So like in Aikido, right, people say you practice a movement really big, and then as you get more advanced, more capable, more knowledgeable, you can make it smaller and smaller. And I think that's the same with rolls. So where ukemi still may be big, I think it should still be a reflection of what your body is doing. So from here, I don't want to, it's still weird and I can make it not hurt myself, but that extraness isn't what is necessary right now, because it's just me in my kitchen and you all out there. So from here, I don't need to do anything more. And as I get more, what is it called? Comfortable in my body, knowing my limits and where everything is moving, when I take ukemi for other people as well, I can bring it back to that spot where I feel this connection through my limbs. I know how my hands and my pinkies are contributing, but my center is where it's collecting and processing all that information. And so as well as you continue to roll, I'm just going to talk at you for a moment, but continue to roll. Let me know if you can't hear me. I want you to think about how you're feeling today. How did you wake up? How are you taking this class? Are they different? This is just your wellness. How are you feeling today? And even just reflecting on that question, you're taking ukemi for yourself. Finding information and gathering information is what I think of as ukemi. And so obviously this applies to not just the art of falling per se, but it is truly receiving, and it's necessary for all your roles in life. Gathering and processing information. And I think that's most powerful when you process from your center and your core. So rather than being attacked and being thrown back with your head, and that's where all my energy is going. Rather, if I get thrown back, I can still receive it in my core. And this practice, I hope, will help you notice where that exists in your body. I'm trying to tie the mental and the physical. So by accessing it through physical drills has really helped me in how I move through the world, as well as just process information in a way that's not overwhelming, because we're in a time where it feels really overwhelming. Back and forth. Play with a little too much, that off balance, disconnected parts, because it's helpful to feel where you're off balance in order to really see where you are centered. You can do this way smaller, off balance, you can catch yourself. Olaf, hi. And you can see where everything is moving. Nice. And so just like that original strength rolling, you can make it bigger. I call these egg rolls. They keep coming up. Hi, Pup Pup. Excuse me. Excuse me. Go, I'm not playing. I'm not playing. That was my dog, Olaf. So we're rolling and really activating our sides and trying not to clunk. So even though it's not my core, I'm treating each piece of me with care. Lay your hand down, your wrist down, your elbow, all the way up your shoulder, all the way across your back and around. Celebrate and hold your space. Nice. And continue, I'm just going to peek through gallery view really fast. Beautiful. And remember to pull your focus into your center. Oh, I see Josh and Zoe doing a different drill. Great. Nice job. And yeah, the eternal king of Norway, Olaf, not the snowman, Olaf. Great job, folks. And now as well, I want to start from the floor again, just like an original strength. But now, rather than being on our butts, seeing where balance is, we can be on our knees, seeing how far we can move. You can bring your feet into the equation and feel what's off balance, where you're balanced, sinking into the bottom of a squat as you're able. I personally have had a lot of ankle and hip injuries, so one side is way tighter, and that affects my center because it's my entire leg. Moving around where balance is, hands and knees and feet. And I also love teaching kids, so I do want to be a bit silly. So if you pretend to be different animals, dog rolling, a cat crawling, and just see how your balance and your movement change as you play with these different roles. Go back and forth between erratic and unbalanced. Don't hurt yourself, but then try to move with everything more connected. All these moves come from Swariwa's attack. And now that we're up as well, I want to put a little more weight on our upper body. We've been focusing a lot on our lower body. So now, in a tripod, grabbing the back knee, pushing it through, and just like a seesaw, not going anywhere, just making sure your arm and your foot are once again connected. You could extend your leg all the way. You can keep it bent. And adding some weight to your shoulder, really gently. And it's this relationship between the ground and your body, equal and opposite. I can't just collapse into the ground. That's unsafe for me and my shoulder. I want to press out my shoulders the same way I was doing with that back fall. Expand your entire back, because that applies too for a front roll. Try to lift one leg, lift your knee. And you could just place your ear on the ground for extra balance. I feel my shoulder warming up. I feel my neck warming up. Nice. And if you're ready, just roll all the way over, but stay on the ground. So that connection, once again, I'm laying my back and I'm not removing any part of me from the ground once it touches. The other direction, sinking and warming up this side as well, loading the weight. Lifting my knee. And staying in relationship with the ground. Continue, please. Nice. So it's really hard to slow down sometimes, and that's where we notice maybe what's sticking or not as smooth in our faster kemi. It works on a lot of flexibility with the shoulders as well. Nice. And once again, if you need to explore something else, if you just want to feel the weight on your shoulder, you can also do it from laying down, laying on top of your shoulder, and just pushing up. And that's way less strain, impact. Just going back and forth. It's working the same things. And then maybe when you come here, try to lift with just your shoulder. So I'm pressing my elbow back into the ground. And so this is totally relaxed, but I'm making the shape on the ground. Which is activated. So rather here, I can just let my weight come on my shoulder, press up. Weight on the shoulder and pressing up. Or when you're here, feel like a bit like side push-ups almost. And whatever works, one leg, bent knees. This will strengthen your shoulder because you need to have that shoulder strength to keep everything expanded as you're thrown. And this is why I love original strength too. I see how it all ties in. Wonderful, folks. And so even as you go back to other drills, maybe with this front roll, I feel that expansion in my shoulder. It's not down. I feel that expansion in my shoulder and I'm maintaining that. through and keeping my extension going and connecting with the ground. And with a front roll, it's a little more difficult than a back roll to feel where your center is, but your pelvis is always that point. So as I'm going over, pelvis is still, oops, I need to face the screen to talk. Pelvis is still where all that weight is, and you want it to reconnect with the ground. So from here, even though my shoulder is doing a lot of the work, I'm supporting it with my pelvis, extending through my pelvis, my hara, pushing up, up, up. Nice. Beautiful. And now folks can continue all the way up with their roll so they don't need to stay connected to the ground. I know many folks are already doing that. So continue all the way. Good. And if that is uncomfortable, you can also practice just a barrel roll. Coming all the way up onto your elbows is really helpful in strengthening those muscles. And the emphasis is the work where I'm using my shoulder muscles, the work and energy and power for that work is coming from my center and my pelvis. Christina Bergeron just obviously being an inspiration. Nice job, folks. Okay. And now, moving to standing. Okay. So from here, you could be sitting or standing, whichever feels best for you. Because now our top half is really activated, and I want to go back to the legs. I apologize for not being able to see my feet so much, but I'll describe them. So from here, my weight is just behind my ankle bones on the outside of my feet. So right about here, that's where I feel all this weight coming down and sinking out. And this is just a personal preference. I realize I maybe focus on the outside of my feet a lot and what's connecting with the ground because I like my arches to feel really light. So this energy passing going through my center, it comes up my arches, up the inside of my thighs, collects in my pelvis, and then right down my butt, the outside of my legs, and down to the area pointed by my ankle. So you can trace that path with your breath. In on the up leg, down on the out. This is very familiar to what Shifu Sally Chang was doing yesterday with Qigong. And make sure you're not just dropping and bending. I really want to activate my legs. So I'm staying fairly upright. If it's easier, you can widen your legs for a deeper squat. If flexibility is a concern. Nice. And so my legs feel warm. It feels connected. My knees are soft. And so right now, I want to invite you to think about something difficult during this pandemic. Something that you can focus on. Maybe not the pandemic, but this year. And welcome that in. But make sure you're sinking and you're welcoming it with your center. And breathing so that the movement still exists in your body. And that was a really long warm-up and process to get to a point where we can think about a difficult time or situation in a centered way. Because I personally start processing from my brain, and that feels really unbalanced. The same exercise that we were doing on the floor, we can do standing as well. We're all centered and great, but now take that away. Rock around, lead with your head, but as bipedal people, it's really hard to lead with your head. Feet can come up. This may be a night after a cocktail class. Thank you, Mallory and Amanda. But this is how I feel that being head pushed is when I try to process things mentally, which doesn't work for me. So my question is, how can I find that mental state through my physical body, or how, if my physical body is in a more reasonable spot, how can I use that to help access my mental state? So that give and take is really important. And I know that's what a lot of people do with meditation. If right now I'm very flustered mentally, but I find a position where I can be centered, that calms me mentally. Or if my body is all hectic, but I can remember what it feels like to be in that state, that helps my body calm down. And so next exercise, let me check time. The next exercise that I wanted to introduce is from a community offering that I put together. And we can do this seated or standing, but I want you to find that centered place again. And it is from a lot of de-escalation exercises that people have done. It's a walking drill, but this is just going to be an imagined scenario. So there's no actual danger or harm. Please take care of yourself and don't go places that are not good for you today. But I want you to picture from that sitting centered place or standing centered place, you're walking down the street and your eyes can be closed or open, whatever you're comfortable with. You're walking down the street and an individual is approaching you who is the scariest person for you. Maybe it's an actual person. Maybe it's just an idea of a person, but they're approaching you from about a block away, but you see them, notice them. So first, I would like you to acknowledge who that person is. Is it a neighbor you've had conflict with? An ex-partner? A police officer? A really tall Black man? Who is it? Notice the details about them. And I want you to try to feel in your body your reaction to that, your reaction to this person walking towards you. I personally feel my neck tighten up. I know many folks feel their stomach in a knot, or just their chest tightening. But know that you have a choice, always have a choice with consent. And not consenting is a choice. Breathe into your pelvis, into that centered place that we found at the very beginning as we were rolling. And maybe look at this person again. They're a bit closer now. In your imagination, shift how you're walking. Take up more space. Expand your lats just like we were doing during rolling. Sink your shoulders. Make sure your neck and your jaw aren't taut. It's your imagination, so make yourself bigger. And right now, I feel a lot of weight and warmth in my pelvis. That feels like such a secure base for me to be sitting on, standing on. I can notice who's walking towards me and just process it. And now you just walk past each other. Feel that transaction as you pass this individual. Continuing forward is so important. You can take what you will with that action, continue walking, start running, start flying. But know that what you do with that situation, whether you consented to being passed or not, you still have your center with you. And know that you are an agent of your autonomous self in that situation. Whether you consent to do this drill or not, it's your choice. And so once again, make sure you're breathing deep into your pelvis, expanding your belly, and that breath is being filled by this energy through my arches of your feet all the way up into your pelvis and back down, being supported by the earth. And there's this intense gravity between you and the earth. And this median and within us as well is being pulled toward the sky. But it's not tension, but it's expansion. So this was a really long introduction that I hope folks practice again and again so that they can find that spot more quickly. Whether you're a mental processor, so you need to get in that mental space to find this processing place, whether you're a body processor, so you need to feel that feeling to get into that space, but make sure they meet in the middle. And whatever small interaction it can be, whether someone cuts you off in traffic, try to look at it from that centered place. And I personally find that in a lot of ways through ukemi, because I don't think of ukemi as just, as I said, falling. I'm always practicing ukemi. It's not even the flip side of the coin to nage for me. It's just receiving information from the world, information from myself, which is really difficult to explore. And we have a couple minutes for questions.
Thank you, Sam. That was wonderful. While waiting for some questions, I have one. Okay. So clearly, I mean, your ukemi is so amazing and grounded, and anything can come at you, and you just absorb it and diffuse it, like a blob of flying jello. So
yeah.
But
wet towel.
When it comes, but so when it comes to having figurative attacks, you're saying to keep it into your center, and people talk about letting things eat you up inside, or hit you inside. So what's the difference, and how do you change it from receiving it and diffusing it in your center, that versus letting it eat you up inside? It's all so internal. What's the difference?
Yeah, I think I struggle with this a ton. Whereas my ukemi may be more beautiful than my personal processing of things. I think right now it's those reminders that I don't just need to fester what I was given, like just hold that in a jar and let that eat me up, because I do think that is very different than actually picking apart the pieces and exploring, being really curious about my reactions, and sometimes being a little more dissociated in that way helps me. If it's too intense to figure out in the immediate, if I step back and kind of just like a scientist oh, what is this? How does that make me feel? If I poke this, where do I feel it in my body? And so understanding it better, and that may happen not during the interaction, right? This is something you can take home and think about in bed before you go to sleep. This is something you can think about as you wake up, something that happened days ago, but I want that processing to come into your life. And I know that people, and me, everyone has a lot of habits that are self-defense mechanisms that are automatic. As a mixed person, being called articulate all the time, because that's the only word people think of often. And there's this automatic smile of like, thanks. But that's not how I feel. It's okay, how much of the history do I want to go into? How many times that I'm going to track that I'm called articulate when folks around me aren't? And then making sure I'm applying whatever energy I've taken from that, what energy I've put forth is not going into the past, it's going into my future. So this can be big and large scale. It can be as I'm washing the dishes, focusing on just, I'm very sensory. I love washing the dishes as long as we have warm water. So letting that glide over me, and then obviously using my imagination to match that with situations, letting them rinse down the sink with whatever gook I don't want anymore. And so this goes back to being really playful as well. I try to be creative in the games that I give myself when interacting, to stay engaged, to stay in the moment, but just be present in various ways. So whether I'm tapping myself every time someone calls me articulate, because I notice that, I acknowledge it, it's gone. Okay. Or processing later, as I said, in your bed. And then especially this summer, noticing where is that energy that I'm putting out into the world or towards myself. And the theme for this weekend, I feel, also has been be kind to yourself. Being kind to yourself expands and extends to being kind to the world around you. So yeah, I think a big part of that is processing, which I'm still exploring and figuring out. That was a long.
Yeah, you're younger. You've been,
I don't know.
yeah, you've just been, okay. You've been through so much. I mean, being at Minneapolis in the heart of the protests, and you really have a lot to take in, and you've been handling it very, very well. So you're a great example.
Thank you. And a part of that drill that I didn't mention as well is thinking of switching roles and you being the threatening person or scary person walking towards someone else, and taking that imagination drill on a different way, because you are a really scary person for someone. I don't care who you are. You have some identity that is scary to someone else, or someone, it may be an irrational fear, but knowing what it feels like to be received as threatening is really interesting, and something that you can take yourself through, to maybe put yourself in someone else's shoes. We have time for one more question, and I'll try to answer like succinctly.
You have nice comments about using what you showed. Any questions? Anyone want to just break in with a question?
I wasn't gonna, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I was gonna make a comment about what you gave us this morning, Sam, and I just think it's so, you were saying how long it took to get to that place, but I really embraced that length because it was so deep. It was multifaceted in a way where, a common movement that we can relate to, that rolling and feeling, and it's, like you said, playful. It brings you into a place of inner introspection. And then with the ending, with the meditative challenge, I'd say, to go into those places and look, I find like the hardest thing now, we're not taking ukemi from each other. That whole area of the neck is not getting that strength and that feeling of holding ourselves together. So just the aspect of, bringing that part in, bringing the place in where I can be playful, bringing it in where I can look into myself and see where I am. it's so wonderful how you combine that into this simple place. You know, it was a moving meditation. I just appreciated it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And not in the pandemic, I've noticed I feel my fingers are really thin and I'm self-conscious of them after not grabbing and being thrown by folks and such. And I think another challenge is in a snap, how centered can you be? In whatever situation is different as well, whether there's flashbangs going off over your head. I'm not as centered as I would be teaching this class, but I'm somewhere. And I acknowledge those different levels of myself too. And we move through the world trying to be centered, and we remind ourselves, and that's a game in itself. Am I balanced? Is something I'm always curious about. Am I tackling a friend? So are they balanced? Is really fun, but as well, it's not the same all the time. And the sensei quote that I think of, I guess, most is when asked about how often he loses his center, it's just all the time. He just returns to it. Thank you very much, everyone, for being open to exploring this with me, being playful on some serious notes. It just warms my heart for you all to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much, Sam.